Okay, let's have a chat about witchcraft. As you know, witchcraft came up in last year's paper. It was the big question, the 16-mark question of 2010, which leads me to believe that perhaps it won't be the big question again this year, but again it's something we need to know in case it crops up in that last section of the paper. Okay, witchcraft. The notion of witchcraft is a very ancient one. It's not something that's invented in the modern era. So it's been around for a long, long time. Henry VIII was the first person to kind of make witchcraft a crime in law, treated it as a serious offence, and his daughter, Elizabeth I, divided witchcraft up into minor and major categories of crime. However, it's James I, the first of the Stuarts, the guy who was the object of the assassination attempt in the gunpowder plot. He's absolutely fascinated with the whole idea of witchcraft. He writes his famous book on it, Self-Styled Expert, Demonology. He writes that in 1597. So he's very interested in the whole notion of witchcraft. And as you know, accusations of witchcraft in the main tend to be levelled at women, or have been always levelled in the main at women. Why is this the case? We've got three explanations. The first is this idea of misogyny. This is the notion, the idea that some men are just have a hatred and fear of women, and so therefore use women as the targets of scapegoating or accusations. That's one explanation. The second explanation is the influence of Christianity. England is a Christian country, has been for nearly 2,000 years, and in the Bible, of course, most famously, Adam and Eve. Eve is the temptress who tempts Adam into committing a sin which leads to the downfall of mankind. So the influence of Christianity has placed women in this strange ambivalent role as temptresses, if you like, leading men astray. Thirdly, another related religious aspect is the influence of the Puritans, particularly in the 17th century. Puritans, incredibly strict fundamentalist Christians, and again they have a very fixed idea of the role of a woman, and they're very suspicious of some of the things women do in villages, the role of women in helping people, offering medical advice or even abortions. They're very suspicious of the role of women in the local community. So these are three factors that do lead us to understand why women in particular are singled out for accusations of witchcraft. How on earth do we spot a witch? Again, we did this activity in class. I'm sure you can roll them off quite easily. There are 7 ways in which a witch was believed to be identified. I won't go through them. Can I remember all of them? The swimming test, the needle test, having a familiar present, being a member of a coven, having somebody else accuse you of witchcraft. And there are others. These were the methods, or these were the ways in which people believed you could identify a witch, particularly in the 17th century. And the 17th century is interesting to us because it's the period where we see the greatest amount of focus or paranoia or fear of witches, particularly in the key year of 1645, slap bang in the middle of the English Civil War. That's not a coincidence. And this is the period, of course, which sees the rise of the self-styled witchfinder general Matthew Hopkins and his accomplice John Stern. They begin in Manningtree, a small town in Essex, and then go on this mad witch hunt across the whole of East Anglia, moving up through Essex, through Suffolk and into Norfolk, where something like, we're not sure exactly how many, something like 300 women are accused of being witches. Why does it happen then? The country is in turmoil, many men are away fighting, there's a lot of hardship, there's a lot of hunger, and so into this climate of fear and distrust, accusations of witchcraft come to the fore, if you like. They had been around before, but this particular period sees them crystallisation and a sharp increase in the amount of witchcraft accusations. And Matthew Hopkins is responsible for the deaths of many women during this period. Why does it disappear along with Matthew Hopkins after 1645? It doesn't happen immediately, but England begins to recover its prosperity. England becomes less of a superstitious place, more of a rational place. The influence of science is greater during this period. So again, it doesn't happen overnight. There's not a switch from being superstitious to being rational and scientific, but gradually, over the decades and over the centuries, accusations of witchcraft will diminish and eventually become something forgotten and something regarded as ridiculous. Okay, That's witchcraft. Again, it was a big question last year, might crop up again this year. So have a look at your notes, make sure you're absolutely familiar with witchcraft. Just a quick recap. Henry VIII made it a very serious crime. His daughter Elizabeth I divided into major and minor cases of witchcraft. James I, self-proclaimed expert on witches, published his book Demonology in 1597. Why are women the targets of these accusations? Could be down to misogyny, the influence of Christianity, Adam and Eve. It could be down to the influence of the Puritans in the middle of the 17th century. You know how they attempted to identify a witch. 1645, key year, Matthew Hopkins going on the rampage around East Anglia, begins in Manningtree, Essex. It declines because England passes through this terrible period of the English Civil War, becomes more prosperous, becomes more scientific. So gradually, over the decades and over the centuries, there's a more scientific approach to this type of phenomenon, and it will gradually fade and die away. That's witchcraft.